I was down on my knees, mopping the marble floor of St. Catherine's Church at 6 a.m., when I heard my son's voice echoing through the empty sanctuary. He was talking to the priest about his wedding date. The same son who hadn't spoken to me in 2 years, standing 15 feet away, acting like the man scrubbing his future altar didn't exist. That's when I realized my own family had decided I was already dead. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family's life, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. My name is David. I'm 67 years old, and I clean this church every morning before dawn. St. Catherine's has become my second home, though it used to be my first. This is where I married my late wife Margaret 38 years ago, where I held my infant son Michael for his baptism, where I used to sit in the third pew every Sunday, dropping $20 bills into the collection plate when business was good. Now I arrive at 5:30 with a mop bucket and industrial cleaner, earning $12 an hour to maintain the place where I once belonged. The morning routine never changes. I unlock the side door with the key Father Martinez gave me. I flip on the soft lights that illuminate the stained glass. I start with the altar, working my way down the center aisle, then the side chapels. The work is quiet, methodical. It gives me time to think, though sometimes I wish it didn't. I was polishing the brass candlesticks when I heard the heavy front doors open, footsteps on marble, 2 voices. One I recognized immediately, even after all this silence: Michael. My chest tightened. I hadn't seen him in 8 months, not since that day at the grocery store when he walked past me in the produce section like I was a stranger, like I was nobody. I kept working, but my hands started shaking. The brass cleaner left streaks. I could hear him talking to someone. A woman's voice, soft and refined. His fiancée, Sarah. I'd never met her, but I'd heard about her from Mrs. Rodriguez, my neighbor, who reads the society pages. They were here about their wedding. My son was planning to get married in the church where I worked as a janitor, and he didn't even know I'd be there. Father Martinez's office door opened. I could hear his warm greeting, the way he welcomed everyone who came seeking God's blessing. Michael, Sarah, wonderful to see you both. Come in, come in. I should have stayed at the altar, should have kept cleaning, stayed invisible like I'd learned to do, but something pulled me toward the sound of my son's voice. I found myself moving closer to the office, cloth still in my hand, pretending to dust the nearby pews. Father, we're hoping to book the church for June 15th, Michael was saying. His voice had changed over the years, more confident, more polished. The voice of a successful attorney, not the boy who used to practice his school presentations in front of me at the kitchen table. June 15th, lovely, Father Martinez replied. That gives us plenty of time to prepare. Have you thought about pre-Cana classes? Sarah laughed, a sound like wind chimes. Oh, we'll do whatever's required, Father. Daddy says St. Catherine's is the only proper church in the city for a wedding. I froze. Daddy? I wondered if Michael ever talked about his own father, if Sarah even knew he had one. Father Martinez must have seen me through his office doorway because his voice changed slightly. You know, I should mention, we have someone here who I think you might. Actually, Father, we're running a bit behind schedule, Michael interrupted quickly. Could we just go over the basics today? Date availability, costs, that sort of thing? My son had seen me. In that split second when Father Martinez started to speak, Michael had looked through the doorway and seen his father mopping floors in the church where he wanted to get married, and he'd made his choice. I stood there holding my cleaning cloth, watching Father Martinez's face fall slightly. The old priest knew my story, knew how proud I'd been of Michael's success, how much it hurt when the phone call stopped coming. Father Martinez had tried several times to create opportunities for reconciliation, but you can't force love where it doesn't exist anymore. Of course, Father Martinez said quietly. Let me get my calendar. I walked away before I could hear more, walked back to the altar on legs that felt unsteady, but their voices carried in the empty church, every word clear as a bell. $50,000. That's what Sarah's father was spending on their wedding. Flowers from some exclusive shop downtown, a reception at the country club, a honeymoon in Tuscany. I sat down in the front pew for a moment, overwhelmed. $50,000. I remembered when $50 seemed like a fortune, when I was working double shifts in construction, saving every penny to put Michael through law school. When I sold my truck to make his final tuition payment, taking the bus to work sites for 2 years until I could afford another vehicle. Now he was marrying into the kind of money I'd dreamed of providing him, the kind of family I'd wanted him to have, and I was the embarrassment that needed to be hidden away. When they finished their meeting, I was back at the altar, polishing the same candlestick I'd been cleaning when they arrived. I heard their footsteps, heard Sarah's voice saying something about flowers and photographers. I kept my back turned, giving my son the privacy he clearly wanted. But as they reached the door, I heard something that stopped my heart. "Oh, Michael, darling," came another woman's voice, older, more commanding. "How did it go? Did you book it?" "All set, Mother Harrison," Michael replied. "June 15th is ours." Mother Harrison, settee. Ra's mother had been waiting outside, probably in one of those luxury cars I saw in the parking lot sometimes. "Wonderful," she said. "And no complications?" There was a pause. A long, heavy pause. "No complications," Michael said finally. I turned around just as they were leaving, just in time to see Mrs. Harrison glance back through the doors. She looked right at me. This 67-year-old man in work clothes, holding a dusty cloth, and she smiled. Not a friendly smile, not a polite smile, a satisfied smile, like she'd won something. I sat alone in that church for another hour after they left, surrounded by the smell of cleaning solution and the echo of my son's voice discussing the most important day of his life, a life I was no longer part of. Outside, I could hear the morning traffic picking up. People heading to offices, to important meetings, to lives that mattered. I counted the quarters in my pocket. Bus fare home to my one-bedroom apartment, where I'd heat up a can of soup and wonder how I'd become the kind of father a son needed to hide from his future wife's family. But Mrs. Harrison's smile stayed with me. There was something in it that felt like more than just social snobbery, something that felt like she knew exactly who I was, and she was glad I'd been watching. The apartment feels smaller in the afternoons, especially on Sundays, when I used to cook for Michael. When I used to set 2 places at my kitchen table and listen to him talk about his cases, his dreams, his life that seemed to be growing brighter every month. Now Sundays stretch out like empty highways, nothing but silence and the sound of other families through thin walls. I keep thinking about that morning in the church, trying to understand when everything changed, when the son who used to call me every other day became someone who could pretend I didn't exist. It didn't happen, overnight. It was more like watching a sunset. You don't notice the light fading until suddenly it's dark. 3 years ago, my construction business failed. 26 years of building other people's dreams, and it all came apart in 6 months. The economy shifted. Younger contractors with lower overhead started underbidding every job. My equipment got old, my back got older, and one day I was sitting in a lawyer's office signing bankruptcy papers. Not Michael's office, though he was already practicing by then. I was too proud to ask my son to handle his father's failure. I remember the day I had to tell him. He came for Sunday dinner like always, still in his good suit from church. I'd made pot roast, his favorite since he was 12. We were sitting at this same table when I said the words, "Son, I'm losing the business." He set down his fork, asked the right questions. How much did I owe? What were my options? Could I sell the equipment? His voice was calm, professional, like I was a client, not his father. "Dad, this isn't the end of the world," he said. "You'll figure something out. You always do." But something had changed in his eyes, something that looked like disappointment, like I'd let him down by not being invincible. The Sunday dinners started coming less frequently after that. "Big case this weekend, Dad. Meeting some friends from law school. Sarah and I have plans." Sarah. That's when her name started appearing in our conversations. Sarah and her family's law firm. Sarah and her connections. Sarah and the life she could offer him. I should have seen it coming. I walk to my dresser and pull out the photo album Margaret put together before she died. Pictures of Michael from birth to law school graduation. Here's one from his 8th birthday. Gap-toothed grin, chocolate cake all over his face, my arm around his shoulders. Here's his high school graduation, both of us in cheap suits but proud as kings. College orientation, me helping him carry boxes to home. His dorm room, while other fathers hired moving companies. And here's the day I'm most proud of. Law school graduation, Michael in his cap and gown, diploma in hand, me standing next to him in the only good suit I owned. I'd worked 16-hour days for 3 years to pay those tuition bills, lived on coffee and sandwiches, drove a truck with 200,000 miles and a broken heater. That day, after the ceremony, Michael hugged me in the parking lot and said, "Dad, I'm going to take care of you now. You've done enough. It's my turn." I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. The phone calls started getting shorter. "Just calling to check in, Dad. Everything's fine here. Work's keeping me busy." When I'd try to make plans, there was always something else. A work dinner, a weekend trip with Sarah, a family obligation, though apparently I didn't count as family anymore. The last real conversation we had was 18 months ago. I'd called to tell him about the job at the church, thought he'd be proud that I was staying productive, keeping busy. Instead, there was this long silence on the phone. "You're working as a janitor?" he said finally. "It's honest work, Michael. It pays the bills." Another silence. "Dad, what if someone sees you? What if people I know find out?" That's when I understood. I wasn't his father anymore. I was his embarrassment. "Son, there's no shame in working with your hands." "I know that. It's just complicated now." Complicated. That's what I'd become. A complication. I closed the photo album and put it back in the drawer. No point in torturing myself. The boy in those pictures is gone. He grew up and decided his father wasn't good enough for the life he wanted to live. Mrs. Rodriguez knocks on my door around 4 o'clock holding an envelope. "David, this came to my mailbox by mistake. Has your son's name on it?" My hands shake as I take it. Thick paper, elegant printing. "Mr. and Mrs. Charles Harrison requests the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter, Sarah Elizabeth, to Michael David Morrison." Michael David Morrison. He was named after me. David was my father's name, and my grandfather's before that. 4 generations of Davids, and now one of them is ashamed of where he came from. I read the invitation twice. The ceremony will be at St. Catherine's Church, my church, where I'll be working that morning, probably setting up chairs and making sure everything's perfect for my son's wedding. The reception follows at Hillcrest Country Club, where I've never been and never will be. At the bottom, in small print, "Adults only celebration." Even if I were invited, they wouldn't want an old man in a cheap suit embarrassing them at their country club reception. Mrs. Rodriguez is still standing in my doorway, her kind eyes taking in my expression. "You okay, David?" "I'm fine. Just wedding planning. You know how it is." She nods, but I can see the pity in her face. The whole building probably knows by now that my son doesn't speak to me, that the successful lawyer who used to visit every Sunday hasn't been seen in 2 years. After she leaves, I sit at my kitchen table with the invitation spread in front of me. I try to imagine that day. Michael in a rented tuxedo, Sarah in a dress that costs more than I make in 6 months, Father Martinez performing the ceremony, probably wondering where the groom's family is sitting. I picture the empty pew, the space where a father should be, the questions people might whisper. Where's his family? Doesn't he have parents? And I imagine Sarah's mother, Mrs. Harrison, smiling that satisfied smile, the one that says she got exactly what she wanted. I fold the invitation carefully and put it in my shirt pocket. Tomorrow I'll return it to the post office. Wrong address, they'll mark it. But tonight I'll keep it close to my heart. Evidence that somewhere in this city, a young man named Michael David Morrison is getting married, and his father is a ghost who cleans the church where it's happening. The invitation sits on my kitchen table for 3 days before I can bring myself to read it again. Each time I walk past, I see that elegant script, that expensive paper, and I feel like I'm looking at evidence of my own erasure. "Mr. and Mrs. Charles Harrison request the honor of your presence." No mention of the groom's family. No, together with his parents, or son of the late Margaret Morrison and David Morrison. Just Sarah's parents. As if Michael appeared in their lives fully grown, without a history, without a father who raised him. I've been erased from my son's story so completely that his future in-laws can pretend I never existed. And maybe that's easier for everyone. Maybe I'm just a complication that doesn't fit their narrative of success and respectability. At first, I told myself there had to be some mistake. Maybe there would be a second invitation, a family one, something that acknowledged I exist. I checked my mailbox every day for a week, hoping, but the only mail I get anymore is bills and grocery store circulars. No wedding invitations addressed to the father of the groom. That's when the anger hit. Not the explosive kind of anger that makes you throw things or shout at walls. The quiet kind that burns steady and low, like embers that never quite go out. The kind that comes when you realize you've been played for a fool. I raised that boy. I got up at 4 in the morning for 18 years to make him breakfast before school. I taught him to tie his shoes, to ride a bike, to throw a curveball. I sat through every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every little league game where he struck out and came crying to the dugout. I remember when he was as 8 and got pneumonia. Margaret was already sick herself, so I took 2 weeks off work to sit by his hospital bed. No health insurance meant I paid those bills for 3 years, but I didn't care. I just sat there reading him stories and watching his fever break, promising God I'd do anything to keep this child safe. And I kept that promise. Even when it meant selling everything I owned to pay for his education, even when it meant working jobs that broke my body and my spirit, I kept him safe, kept him fed, kept him moving toward the life I knew he deserved. The bargaining phase came next. Maybe I could fix this. Maybe if I reached out, explained that I understood why he distanced himself, showed him I wasn't going to embarrass him, we could work something out. Maybe I could sit in the back of the church during the ceremony, just to witness this moment in his life. I wouldn't ask for anything else. I actually wrote the letter. Dear Michael, I hope you and Sarah are well. I heard about your engagement and wanted to congratulate you both. I know things have been difficult between us, but I want you to know how proud I am of the man you've become. I threw it away before I could mail it, because deep down I knew what his response would be. Polite embarrassment, maybe a phone call asking me to understand his position, words that would hurt worse than this silence. Then came the sadness, the kind that settles into your bones like arthritis, aching worse on rainy days. I'd lie awake at night picturing the wedding I'll never attend. Michael at the altar, looking handsome in his tuxedo. Sarah walking down the aisle in white silk, her father's arm steady under hers. The priest asking if anyone objects to this union, and no one speaking because the only person who might have something to say isn't there. I imagine the reception afterward, speeches about young love and bright futures, the father of the bride toast, full of jokes and pride and hope. The place where the father of the groom toast should go, filled with music instead of words. Would Michael notice the absence? Would there be a moment during the ceremony when he'd glance toward the family section and feel the empty space where his father should be sitting? Or has he learned to forget me so completely that my absence feels normal now? But it's the small details that hurt most. Details I know about my son that his new family will never understand. Like how he always tugs his left ear when he's nervous. He'll probably do it during the ceremony, and Sarah will think it's cute, not knowing he's done it since he was 3 years old. Or how he can't stand the taste of coconut, so I hope someone remembers to tell the caterer. Or how his favorite song is still Brown-Eyed Girl, because that's what I used to sing to him when he was scared during thunderstorms. Those memories belong to me. They're all I have left of the boy I raised. Yesterday, I was at Miller's Market, buying groceries with the coupons I clipped from Sunday papers, when I heard a familiar voice in the next aisle, Sarah's mother, Mrs. Harrison, talking to someone on her phone. Well, he's perfect for Sarah, she was saying. Successful, ambitious, and he doesn't really have family to complicate things. You know how difficult in-laws can be. Doesn't really have family. I stood there behind the cereal boxes, listening to this woman describe my son as an orphan, as if losing his mother to cancer somehow erased me too, as if the man who raised him, who sacrificed everything for his future, simply didn't exist. His background is a bit unfortunate, she continued, but Sarah's influence has been wonderful for him. She's taught him about proper society, proper connections. He's really blossomed since they've been together. Unfortunate background, that's what I am now. The unfortunate part of Michael's story that needs to be edited out for polite company. I left my half-filled cart in the aisle and walked home in the rain, Mrs. Harrison's words echoing in my head. By the time I reached my apartment, I'd moved past anger, past bargaining, past sadness. I'd reached acceptance, not the peaceful kind of acceptance they talk about in therapy books. The hard kind, the kind that comes when you finally understand that some people are capable of throwing away anything that doesn't serve their purposes, even the person who gave them life. Michael made his choice. He chose Sarah's world over mine, chose respectability over family, chose to become someone new rather than honor where he came from. And maybe, in his mind, he had good reasons. Maybe I really am an embarrassment. Maybe my love really isn't worth the social cost. But that doesn't make it hurt less. Tonight, I'll go to bed in this small apartment, and tomorrow, I'll wake up and go clean the church where my son will get married in 3 weeks. I'll polish the altar where he'll make his vows, arrange the flowers his new family will pay for, make sure every detail is perfect for the most important day of his life. And then I'll go home and pretend it never happened. Because that's what good fathers do, isn't it? We step aside when our children need us to. We love them enough to let them go, even when they're going someplace we can't follow. Even when they're running away from us. The morning routine has become my meditation. 5:30 arrives dark and quiet, and I unlock the side door of St. Catherine's like I'm entering a sanctuary of my own making. The church doesn't judge me. The marble floors don't care that I'm 67 and starting over. The stained glass windows catch the early light and paint everything in colors that make even cleaning supplies look holy. It's been 2 weeks since I overheard Mrs. Harrison's phone conversation. 2 weeks since I understood exactly how my son's new family sees me. But something has shifted in those 14 days. The acute pain has settled into something more manageable. Not acceptance exactly, but a kind of watchful peace. Father Martinez finds me polishing the brass communion rail on a Tuesday morning. He's an early riser, too, often arriving before 6 to prepare for morning mass. We've developed an easy relationship, this old priest and I. He doesn't pity me, which I appreciate more than he knows. "David," he says, settling into the front pew while I work, "you've been quieter than usual lately." I keep polishing. The brass responds to patient pressure, revealing its shine slowly. "Just thinking, Father." "About Michael?" I pause in my work. Father Martinez was the one who baptized my son, who gave him his first communion, who tried to connect us that morning in his office. He knows the whole story without me having to explain the painful parts. "About what comes next," I say finally. "And what's that?" "Learning to be okay with being forgotten." Father Martinez is quiet for a long moment. Outside, we can hear the morning traffic building, people heading to jobs where they matter, where their presence makes a difference. "You know," he says, "I've been doing this for 43 years, married hundreds of couples, baptized their children, buried their parents, and I've learned something about family that might interest you." I stop polishing and look at him. "Blood makes you related," he continues, "but loyalty makes you family. And sometimes the people we're related to choose not to be family anymore. That doesn't diminish who you are, David. It just clarifies who they are." His words settle into the quiet church like incense, filling spaces I didn't know were empty. For the first time in months, I feel something other than loss. Not healing exactly, but the possibility of it. That afternoon, Sarah's family arrives for another wedding planning session. I'm cleaning the side chapel when they sweep in. Sarah's mother directing traffic like a general, Sarah herself looking overwhelmed, and 2 women I don't recognize carrying fabric samples and flower catalogs. From where I'm working, I can hear every word. "The white roses are beautiful, but I think we need something more dramatic," Mrs. Harrison is saying. "Something that photographs better. We want this to look elegant in the society pages." Society pages. Of course, this isn't just a wedding, it's a social announcement, a way to establish Michael's place in their world. "Mother, maybe we should ask Michael what he prefers," Sarah suggests quietly. "Darling, men don't understand these things. That's why mothers plan weddings. Besides, Michael is so busy with work, and he's grateful we're handling the details." I wonder if that's true, if Michael is grateful, or if he's just learned to stay quiet when Mrs. Harrison makes decisions. There's a difference between gratitude and surrender. "What about the groom's side?" one of the other women asks. "Any special requests from his family?" The silence that follows is so complete I can hear my own heartbeat. I stop wiping down the prayer candles and listen. "Michael doesn't really have family to consider," Mrs. Harrison says smoothly. "His mother passed several years ago, and there's no one else of consequence. It makes everything much simpler." No one else of consequence. I should feel angry. I should feel hurt. Instead, I feel something unexpected. A cold, clear understanding. These people aren't just ignoring me. They're actively erasing me, and they're doing it with Michael's permission. The women continue their planning, discussing flower arrangements and seating charts and photographers who specialize in high society events. They talk about Michael like he's a prize they've won, not a person with his own history. And that's when I realize something important. I'm not the only one being erased here. The Michael I raised, the boy who cried at sad movies and stayed up all night helping me tile our kitchen, that person is being erased too. They're creating a new version of my son, one that fits their story better. After they leave, I sit in the empty church and think about what Father Martinez said, about the difference between being related and being family, about loyalty. For 33 years I was loyal to Michael. I put his needs first, his future first, his happiness first. I thought that's what good fathers do, but loyalty is supposed to go both ways, isn't it? That evening, I do something I haven't done in months. I walk to the library and use their computers. I look up Sarah's family, the Harrisons of Hillcrest. Old money, according to the articles I find. Sarah's father owns a law firm that's been in business for 3 generations. Her mother sits on charity boards and hosts fundraisers for the right causes. But as I dig deeper, clicking through business records and social pages, I notice something interesting. The family that seems so secure, so established, has some unusual financial activity in recent years. Property sales, business restructuring, the kind of changes that might indicate money troubles. I'm not sure why this information interests me. I'm not planning anything vindictive, but knowledge feels like power when you've been powerless for so long, and there's something satisfying about understanding the people who have decided you don't matter. Over the next few days, I pay closer attention during their church visits. I notice things I missed before, how Mrs. Harrison's designer handbag has a small tear near the handle, how Sarah's father always pays the church fee, as with a check, then asks Father Martinez to wait a few days before depositing it, how their confident demeanor sometimes slips when they think no one is watching. The family that considers me unfortunate might have some troubles of their own. And Michael, I watch him too during his brief appearances, the way he fidgets with his wedding ring when Sarah's mother talks about the guest list, the way he looks uncomfortable when they discuss the cost of things. The way he glances around the church sometimes, like he's looking for something he's lost. Maybe he is looking for something. Maybe part of him remembers what it felt like to be the son of David Morrison before he became the fiancé of Sarah Harrison. Maybe some small part of him misses the man who raised him. Or maybe that's just wishful thinking from a father who can't quite let go. But I'm learning to live with uncertainty, learning to find purpose in my work, dignity in my daily routine, peace in the knowledge that I did my best with the time I had. If Michael has chosen to forget where he came from, that's his loss to carry. I can't save him from his choices, but I can pay attention to what those choices cost him, and what they might cost the people who encouraged him to make them. It happens on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks before the wedding. I'm mopping behind the altar when Sarah's father and 2 other men arrive early for what sounds like a business meeting, not wedding planning. They don't see me back there, or maybe they just don't care. Rich people have a way of talking around service workers like we're part of the furniture. The situation is more serious than we initially thought, one of them is saying. The IRS audit turned up some irregularities we weren't prepared for. I keep mopping, moving slowly, staying quiet. After 26 years in construction, I learned that the best way to hear important information is to become invisible while it's being shared. How much exposure are we talking about? Sarah's father asks. Potentially 7-figure res, maybe more if they dig into the family trust structures. 7 figures, $700,000 minimum, maybe more. I've never owed $700 I couldn't pay, let alone $700,000. What about Michael? The third voice asks. How much does he know? Nothing yet. Sarah's handling that situation carefully. We need his legal expertise, but we can't afford to have him ask too many questions. Not until after the wedding makes everything official. I stop mopping altogether. They're talking about my son like he's a business acquisition, not a future family member. Like his legal skills are an asset they're purchasing through his marriage to Sarah. And if he starts digging before then? He won't. Sarah's got him completely focused on the wedding and his practice. Besides, men in love don't ask hard questions about their future in-laws' finances. They just want to provide and protect. One of them laughs. Lucky for us, he comes from such humble circumstances. A man with his background isn't going to look too closely at family money. He's probably just grateful to be included. Humble circumstances. Grateful to be included. That's when something inside me shifts. Not breaks. Breaks would be too dramatic. Something quieter than that. Something that's been bent for too long finally straightens up. I walk out from behind the altar, mop bucket in hand, making no effort to hide my presence anymore. The three men look at me with mild surprise, the way people notice a piece of furniture has been moved. "Morning, gentlemen," I say calmly. "Beautiful day for church business." They nod politely and wait for me to leave. Instead, I start mopping the area right in front of them, taking my time, doing thorough work. They exchange glances but don't want to ask a church employee to leave God's house. "Maybe we should continue this conversation on later," Sarah's father suggests. "Of course," I say, not looking up from my work. "Sometimes it's better to discuss family matters in private." The emphasis on family hangs in the air for a moment. Sarah's father looks at me more carefully now, something clicking in his recognition. "Have we met?" he asks. I straighten up, meeting his eyes directly. "I don't think we've been formally introduced. I'm David Morrison." The name lands like a stone in still water. I watch the ripples spread across his face as understanding dawns. "Morrison," he repeats slowly. "Michael's father." The silence that follows is magnificent, not because it's comfortable, but because it's honest. Finally, after months of pretending I don't exist, someone from Sarah's family has to acknowledge that I'm real. "I see," he manages. "I work here," I explain, still holding my mop. "Every morning, 5:30 to 9, making sure everything's perfect for your daughter's wedding." The other two men have gone very quiet, probably wondering how much I heard, how much I understood, what I might do with the information. But I don't look threatening. I'm just an old man with cleaning supplies standing in a church where I clearly belong. "That's very dedicated of you," Sarah's father says finally. "I take pride in my work, always have." I dip the mop back in the bucket, wringing it out slowly. Raised my son to take pride in his work too, though I suppose his work is a bit different from mine these days. Another silence. They're trying to figure out if this is a coincidence or something more deliberate. If the father they've been pretending doesn't exist might actually know something about their situation. "Well," Sarah's father says, "we should probably—" 7 figures is a lot of money," I say conversationally, still focused on my mopping. "That kind of debt can complicate family relationships." The temperature in the church seems to drop 10 degrees. All three men are staring at me now, no longer seeing a piece of furniture, but a potential problem. "I'm sorry," Sarah's father says carefully. "Oh, I couldn't help overhearing. Sound carries in here, all that marble and high ceilings. Acoustics are tricky." I smile slightly. "But don't worry about me. I'm very good at keeping church business confidential." I can see him calculating how much trouble I might cause, how much I actually know, whether it's worth trying to silence me or ignore me. The fact that he has to think about it at all means I'm no longer invisible. "We appreciate your discretion," he says finally. "Of course, family loyalty is important." I pause in my work again, though I suppose loyalty means different things to different people. They leave quickly after that, their business meeting obviously over, but I can feel something has changed. For months, I've been the embarrassing secret they could ignore. Now I'm something else, a witness, maybe even a threat. I'm no longer the ghost in Michael's story. That afternoon, Michael arrives alone for what I assume is a final walkthrough before the wedding. I'm arranging flowers near the altar when he comes in, and for the first time in 2 years, he doesn't pretend not to see me. "Dad," his voice is uncertain, like he's not sure if I'll respond. I look up from the roses I'm placing. "Hello, Michael?" He stands there for a moment, hands in his expensive suit pockets, looking younger than his 33 years. For just a second, I can see the boy who used to help me plant flowers in our backyard every spring. "The church looks beautiful," he says. "Thank you." I try to keep it nice. Another pause. He wants to say something else. I can see it in the way he shifts his weight, the way his eyes won't quite meet mine. "Dad, about the wedding." "What about it?" "I know this situation is complicated." Complicated. The same word he used 18 months ago when he fied. Horace started pulling away. I set down the flowers and give him my full attention. What's complicated about it, son? He struggles for words, and I realize that whatever Sarah's family has told him about keeping me at a distance, he's never quite been comfortable with it. There's still enough of the boy I raised in there to feel guilty about abandoning his father. Sarah's family has certain expectations about appearances, about social circles, and I don't fit those expectations. It's not that simple. Actually, it is that simple. Either I'm your father or I'm not. Either you're proud of where you came from, or you're ashamed of it. His face flushes. I'm not ashamed. Then why haven't you spoken to me in 2 years? Why is your fiancé's family pretending I don't exist? Why am I finding out about your wedding from a misdirected invitation? The questions hang between us like incense, heavy and unavoidable. Dad, you don't understand the pressure. I understand more than you think. I pick up the flowers again, giving my hands something to do. I understand that the people you're marrying into have problems of their own, and they need you for more than just your charming personality. His eyes sharpen. What do you mean? But I don't answer that question. Instead, I focus on arranging the roses, making sure each one catches the light properly. Your wedding is in 3 weeks, I say finally. I hope you'll be happy, Michael. I really do. He stands there for another moment, clearly wanting to say more but not knowing how. Finally, he turns toward Father Martinez's office, then stops. Dad, will you be here that morning, for the ceremony? It's the first time in 2 years he's asked me to be part of something in his life. The first acknowledgement that my presence might matter to him, even if he can't admit it publicly. I'll be here, I say. I'm always here. He nods and walks away, and I'm left alone with the flowers and the echo of a conversation that felt like the beginning of something. Maybe not reconciliation, not yet, but recognition. My son remembered for just a moment that he has a father, and his future in-laws are starting to realize that ignoring me might not be as easy as they thought. The documents start appearing on a Tuesday. Small things at first, crumpled papers in the church's wastebasket, receipts left behind after meetings, fragments of conversations that don't quite add up. I'm not looking for secrets, but when you clean up after people, their carelessness becomes your accidental education. A bank statement with Sarah's father's name on it, showing a balance much lower than I'd expect from someone planning a $50,000 wedding. A legal document about asset transfers, partially torn but still readable. A phone number written on church stationery with IRS appeals written beside it. I don't go looking for this information. It just accumulates, like dust in corners that haven't been cleaned in too long, and the more pieces I find, the clearer the picture becomes. The Harrison family isn't just having financial difficulties, they're in serious trouble. Father Martinez finds me organizing the lost and found box on a Wednesday morning, sorting through items people have left behind over the months. Sunglasses, scarves, a child's toy, and a manila envelope that someone dropped during one of the wedding planning meetings. David, you look troubled, he says, settling into a nearby pew. I hold up a document I shouldn't have but can't ignore. Father, if you knew someone was walking into a situation that could hurt them, what would you do? That depends on the situation, and on whether they'd listen to advice. I show him the paper. A legal notice about frozen assets, addressed to Charles Harrison. Father Martinez reads it carefully, his expression growing serious. Where did you find this? Someone dropped it. Probably doesn't even know it's missing. David, his voice carries a warning. This isn't your business. My son is marrying into this family. Doesn't that make it my business? Father Martinez hands the document back to me. Your son made his choice about your involvement in his life. You can't force yourself back in by becoming his protector. But what if he doesn't know what he's walking into? What if they're using him? Then that's his lesson to learn. The words hit harder than I expect. So I just watch him make a mistake that could ruin his life. David, love isn't about preventing people from making mistakes. It's about being there when they're ready to learn from them. But as I sit in that empty church, surrounded by evidence of the Harrison family's deception, I can't shake the feeling that some mistakes are too costly to learn from. Some traps are designed to be permanent. That afternoon brings another wedding planning session, this one more tense than the others. I can hear raised voices from Father Martinez's office. Sarah's parents arguing about something, their polished facade finally cracking under pressure. We can't keep putting off the creditors, Sarah's father is saying. They want answers, not excuses. The wedding will solve everything, Mrs. Harrison replies. Once Michael is officially family, he'll have access to our legal strategies. He can help us restructure everything. And if he asks questions? He won't. Sarah's made sure of that. I'm cleaning the nave, close enough to hear but hidden by the pillars that separate the main sanctuary from the side areas. They don't know I'm there, or they've forgotten that the janitor has ears. What about the father? A third voice asks. I think it's Sarah's uncle, who's been helping with the legal maneuvering. What about him? He was asking questions the other day, seemed to know more than he should. Mrs. Harrison's laugh is sharp, ugly. Please, what's he going to do? He's a janitor. No one would believe him even if he tried to cause trouble. Still, maybe we should... Should what? He's nobody. A embarrassing reminder of Michael's unfortunate background. If he tries to interfere, we'll handle it the same way we've handled everything else, by making sure no one takes him seriously. I stop cleaning and press my back against the pillar, heart pounding. They're not just erasing me from Michael's story anymore. They're actively planning to discredit me if I become a problem. Besides, Mrs. Harrison continues, in 3 weeks this will all be settled. Michael will be family, legally bound to our interests, and his father will still be mopping floors, completely irrelevant to our son-in-law's new life. Our son-in-law. The possessiveness in her voice makes my skin crawl. They don't see Michael as a person marrying their daughter. They see him as an acquisition, a resource to be managed and controlled. After they leave, I sit in the front pew and try to process what I've heard. They're not just using Michael's legal skills. They're planning to trap him in their financial problems through marriage. Once he's legally family, he'll be responsible for helping them, whether he wants to or not. And they're right about one thing. If I try to warn him, who would believe me? The father he's been avoiding for 2 years, making wild accusations against his fiancée's respectable family. It sounds like jealousy, like a bitter old man trying to sabotage his son's happiness. But I can't just do nothing. I can't watch Michael walk into a trap that will define the rest of his life. That evening, I make copies of everything I've found. Bank statements, legal notices, IRS correspondence, documents about asset transfers and hidden debts. I organize it all in a manila envelope, creating a timeline of the Harrison family's financial collapse. The evidence is damning. They've been hiding debts for years, moving money between accounts and family trusts to avoid creditors. The wedding isn't just a celebration. It's the final step in a plan to use Michael's legal expertise to legitimize their financial manipulations. But how do I get this information to my son without seeming like I'm trying to ruin his happiness? How do I prove I'm trying to protect him, not control him? The answer comes to me while I'm locking up the church. Michael visits every few days now, ostensibly to check wedding details, but really, I think, to work up the courage to talk to me. Each time he sits in different pews, like he's trying to find the right spot to have a conversation we both know needs to happen. Instead of confronting him directly, I start leaving things where he might find them. A bank statement tucked into a hymnal in his usual pew. A legal document left on the chair he sat in yesterday. Pieces of the puzzle placed carefully in his path, allowing him to discover the truth gradually, on his own terms. I'm not trying to manipulate him. I'm trying to give him information and trust his intelligence to know what to do with it. The same way I raised him, by providing tools and trusting his judgment. 3 days before the wedding, I see him pick up one of the documents I left behind. He reads it carefully, then looks around the church as if trying to figure out how it got there. His face goes through several emotions: confusion, concern, then something that looks like recognition. He folds the paper and puts it in his jacket pocket. Then he sits quietly for 10 minutes, staring at the altar where he's supposed to make his vows in 3 days. I don't know if he'll investigate further. I don't know if he'll confront Sarah's family or pretend he never saw anything. I don't even know if he'll connect me to the documents, though I suspect he might. But I've done what I can do. I've given him the truth and trusted him to handle it. The rest is up to the son I raised, the one who's smart, enough to recognize a trap when he sees it, if he's still brave enough to look. And if there's enough of his father's son left in him to choose truth over comfort, even when the truth is harder to live with. The call comes at 2 in the morning on a Sunday. 10 days before the wedding. I answer the phone thinking someone has died, because that's the only reason people call at this hour with good news. Is this David Morrison? The voice is professional, crisp. Yes. This is Agent Sarah Chen with the IRS Criminal Investigations Division. We need to speak with you about your son Michael Morrison and his upcoming marriage to Sarah Harrison. I sit up in bed, suddenly completely awake. Is Michael in trouble? We don't believe so, but we have reason to think he may be unaware of certain circumstances regarding the Harrison family finances. Could you meet with us tomorrow morning? They meet me at a coffee shop downtown, two agents in conservative suits who look like they've been working this case for months. Agent Chen is younger than I expected, with tired eyes that suggest long hours and complex investigations. Mr. Morrison, how much do you know about your son's future in-laws? Enough to know they're not what they seem. She exchanges a glance with her partner. What do you mean by that? I tell them about the documents I've found, the conversations I've overheard, the evidence of financial manipulation and hidden debts. They listen without interrupting, taking notes, asking for details about dates and amounts. Mr. Morrison, Agent Chen says finally, the Harrison family is under federal investigation for tax fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to defraud creditors. We believe they're planning to use your son's legal practice to legitimize illegal financial transfers. The words hit me like cold water. I knew they were in trouble, but federal crimes? Money laundering? My son could go to prison if he gets tangled up in their schemes. Does Michael know? We don't think so, but once he marries into the family and potentially becomes involved in their legal defense, he could be considered a co-conspirator, even if he's innocent. What do you want from me? Agent Chen leans forward. We need someone on the inside, someone who can document their activities without raising suspicion. You have access to their meetings, their discarded documents, their private conversations. You want me to spy on my son's wedding. We want to prevent your son from unknowingly becoming part of a criminal enterprise. I think about Michael sitting in that church pew, reading the document I left for him, the confusion and concern on his face. I think about Mrs. Harrison's satisfied smile, her casual dismissal of me as nobody. I think about the boy I raised, and the man he's become, and the trap that's closing around him while he plans his wedding. What would I need to do? They give me a small recording device and instructions for documenting financial conversations. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would put me in danger. Just careful attention to details I'm already noticing, with better technology to preserve the evidence. The wedding is in 10 days, Agent Chen says. If we're going to act, it has to be soon. Once the marriage is official, the legal complications multiply exponentially. I walk home through empty streets, carrying equipment that could save my son's future or destroy our relationship forever. Because if Michael finds out I've been working with federal agents to investigate his fiance's family, he might never forgive me. But if I don't, and he ends up facing criminal charges, I'll never forgive myself. The next few days pass in a blur of routine work and careful observation. I document conversations about moving money between accounts, record discussions of legal strategies that sound suspiciously like obstruction of justice, photograph documents that detail complex schemes to hide assets from federal investigators. And through it all, I watch Michael growing more troubled, more distant from his fiancée and her family. He's found more of the documents I left behind, and I can see him starting to put the pieces together. Thursday afternoon, 5 days before the wedding, everything changes. I'm organizing supplies in the church basement when I hear shouting from upstairs. Real shouting, not the controlled arguments I've been overhearing during wedding planning. This sounds like panic. I climb the stairs carefully and see Sarah's father pacing in front of the altar, phone pressed to his ear, face red with anger or fear. What do you mean frozen? All of it? What about the business accounts? Sarah and her mother are huddled in the front pew, both crying. Mrs. Harrison's perfect composure has cracked completely. Her makeup is smeared, her hair disheveled, her voice shaking as she tries to calm her daughter. The wedding has to go on, she's saying. It's more important now than ever. Once Michael is legally family. Mother, stop. Sarah's voice is raw. Just stop. This is insane. I move closer, staying in the shadows, but within hearing distance. The recording device in my pocket captures everything. Daddy's in serious trouble, Sarah continues. Federal agents, criminal charges, prison time. We can't ask Michael to walk into this mess. We're not asking, Mrs. Harrison snaps. We're telling. He's committed to this marriage, and he'll honor that commitment. What if he refuses? What if he finds out the truth and backs out? The silence that follows chills me to the bone. Then we make sure he understands the consequences, Mrs. Harrison says finally. We have enough information about his background, his father's business failure, his family's financial struggles. We can make his life very difficult if he doesn't cooperate. They're planning to blackmail my son, to force him into a marriage that will make him complicit in their crimes, and threaten him if he tries to escape. I've heard enough. That evening, I call Agent Chen and arrange to turn over the recordings. But first, I do something I've been avoiding for 2 years. I call my son. Michael, it's Dad. We need to talk. Tonight. It's important. There's a long pause. Dad, this isn't a good time. The wedding is. The wedding is a lie, son. And if you don't listen to me tonight, you're going to spend the next 20 years paying for their crimes. Another pause. Longer this time. Where do you want to meet? The church. 1 hour. And Michael? Come alone. I spend that hour arranging everything I've collected. Documents, recordings, photographs, a timeline of the Harrison family's criminal activities stretching back 5 years. Evidence that my son has been carefully selected not for love, but for exploitation. When Michael arrives, he looks like he hasn't slept in days. His expensive suit is wrinkled, his usual confidence replaced by something that looks like fear. Dad, what's going on? You sounded... I hand him the manila envelope. Everything you need to know is in there. About Sarah's family, about their financial problems, about why they really want you to marry their daughter. He opens the envelope and starts reading, his face changing with each document. Confusion becomes concern. Concern becomes horror. Horror becomes the kind of cold anger I remember from when he was a child and someone had lied to him. How long have you known? He asks finally. Pieces for weeks. The whole picture for about 4 days. And you didn't tell me? Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought your bitter father was trying to sabotage your happiness? He sets down the papers and looks at me directly for the first time in years. Dad, I'm sorry. For everything. For the distance. For the silence. For making you feel like you didn't matter. I was trying to become someone I thought was better than who I really am. Who you really are is my son. That's never changed. We sit together in the quiet church, father and son, surrounded by evidence of the trap he almost walked into and the love that pulled him back from the edge. What happens now? He asks. Now you decide what kind of man you want to be, the kind who runs from problems, or the kind who faces them. Michael looks around the church, the same church where he was baptized, where he almost got married, where his father works every morning to keep things clean and holy. I know what kind of man I want to be, he says quietly, and for the first time in 2 years, I see my son again. The wedding that never happens takes place on a Tuesday morning in October. I arrive at St. Catherine's at my usual time, 5:30, not sure what to expect, but knowing I need to be there. The church feels different somehow, expectant, like it's holding its breath. By 7 o'clock, the vendors start arriving. Florists with arrangements that cost more than I make in a month. Photographers setting up equipment for a society wedding that will never be photographed. A caterer's truck pulling up to deliver food for a reception that's been quietly canceled. I watch from inside as confusion spreads through the parking lot. Phone calls are made, supervisors are contacted, expensive preparations are abandoned. Michael arrives at 8, alone, still in his work clothes from the night before. He looks exhausted but clear-eyed, like someone who's finally stopped running from a difficult truth. Dad, son. We stand together in the sanctuary where he was supposed to make vows to Sarah Harrison in 3 hours. Instead, he's here with his father, Waku, in the aftermath of a decision that probably saved his life. How are you holding up? I ask. Better than I expected. Scared, but better. He sits in the front pew, the same spot where I've sat every morning for the past 8 months. The FBI wants to interview me later today, about what I might have overheard, what Sarah might have told me. Are you worried? No, I didn't know anything and I can prove it. Agent Chen says I'm a witness, not a suspect. We sit in comfortable silence for a few minutes, listening to the confusion outside as vendors try to understand why a $50,000 wedding has vanished overnight. Dad, I need to ask you something. Go ahead. That day 2 years ago, when I called you about the janitor job, when I asked what people would think if they saw you cleaning, do you remember what you said? I remember. I said there's no shame in honest work. And I said it was complicated, that my situation was complicated. He turns to look at me. I was wrong. It wasn't complicated at all. I was just ashamed of being David Morrison's son, and I thought I could become someone better by pretending you didn't exist. Michael, let me finish. I spent 2 years trying to become the kind of man Sarah's family would approve of. Sophisticated, well-connected, free of embarrassing relatives. And you know what I became? I became someone I didn't recognize. Someone who would abandon his own father for social acceptance. I watch my son struggle with words that need to be said but hurt to speak. The man you raised would never have done that. The man you raised would have been proud to introduce his father to anyone, anywhere, regardless of what job he was doing, because the man you raised understood that character matters more than circumstances. You did what you thought was right at the time. No, Dad, I did what was easy, and easy isn't the same as right. Father Martinez appears in the doorway of his office, having heard your voices. He looks relieved to see us together, father and son, finally talking. David, Michael, I heard about the change in plans. Father, I owe you an apology too, Michael says, for the way I behaved that day in your office, for pretending my father was a stranger. The only apology needed is the one you owe yourself, son, for forgetting who raised you. Around 9:30, the last of the vendors finish packing up their unused wedding supplies. The church returns to its normal quiet, broken only by the sound of our conversation and the distant traffic of people heading to jobs where they matter. What happens now? Michael asks. Now you rebuild your life without the Harrisons in it, without their expectations, their money, their version of who you should be. And us? What happens with us? It's the question I've been afraid to hope for, afraid to expect. The possibility that my son might want his father back in his life. That's up to you, Michael. I never stopped being your dad, but I can't force you to be my son. I never stopped being your son. I just forgot how to act like it. We spend the morning together in that church, talking about everything that's happened and everything that needs to happen next. Michael tells me about the investigation, about Sarah's reaction when he confronted her with the evidence, about the relief he feels at walking away from a life that was built on lies. I tell him about the months of silence, about learning to find dignity in work that doesn't require anyone else's approval, about the difference between loving someone and needing their love in return. By noon, we're ready to leave together. Father Martinez locks up behind us, and we walk out into October sunshine that feels warmer than it should. Dad, would you like to come to my apartment? I could make lunch. We could catch up. I'd like that, son. As we walk to his car, a modest sedan, not the luxury vehicle Sarah's family probably expected him to drive, Michael stops and turns to me. Dad, I need you to know something. When I was sitting in that church all those mornings trying to work up the courage to talk to you, I wasn't just feeling guilty about how I'd treated you. I was missing you. Missing the man who taught me right from wrong, who showed me what integrity looks like, who loved me even when I didn't deserve it. You always deserved it, Michael. That's what fathers do. We love you through the mistakes until you remember who you really are. I remember now. 6 months later, Michael starts attending St. Catherine's again. Not every Sunday at first, but regularly enough that I save him a seat in the third pew, the same one where our family used to sit when his mother was alive. He doesn't sit with me immediately. Some healing takes time, and pride dies slowly. But he's there, and I'm there, and Father Martinez smiles every time he sees us in the same sanctuary. Michael's life is simpler now. His law practice is smaller, but more honest. He rents a modest apartment instead of the luxury condo Sarah's family expected him to buy. He drives a car he can afford and wears suits that don't cost more than most people's monthly salary. And he's happier. I can see it in the way he carries himself, the way he speaks to people, the way he looks at his reflection in church windows. He's become the man I raised him to be, not perfect, but honest, not wealthy, but rich in the things that matter. The Harrison family disappeared from our lives as quickly as they'd entered. Sarah married someone else 6 months later, another successful attorney, I heard, someone with fewer ethical scruples and more desperate need for their kind of help. The federal investigation continues, but it's no longer our problem. As for me, I still work at St. Catherine's every morning, still arrive at 5:30, still clean the same floors and polish the same brass. But it's different now. I'm not hiding anymore, not apologizing for my existence, not hoping for recognition from people who've decided I don't matter. I'm just David Morrison, doing honest work in a holy place, proud of the son I raised and the man I've remained. Last Sunday, after morning mass, Michael approached me at the altar where I was arranging flowers. "Dad, would you like to come to my place for dinner this week? I've been practicing that pot roast recipe Mom used to make." "I'd love that, son." "Good. Because I've been thinking, maybe we could make it a regular thing, Sunday dinners, like we used to have." I looked at my son, successful, humbled, finding his way back to the values I'd taught him, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete peace. "I'd like that very much, Michael." "Good, because I missed you, Dad. I missed being your son." And in that moment, standing in the church where this whole story began, I realized something important. I hadn't lost my son at all. I'd just had to wait while he found his way back to being the man I'd raised him to become. Sometimes love means letting go, but sometimes it means holding steady until the person you love remembers who they really are. My son remembered, and that's all any father can really hope for. Final pause. The wedding I was never invited to became the beginning of the relationship I'd always wanted, not because I fought for it or demanded it or tried to force it, but because I loved my son enough to let him make his own mistakes and trusted him enough to know he'd eventually find his way home.